What's going on, everyone, and big welcome to you all to our channel. We are Team Crushing the Meta. We are back with another deck profile, and this time we'll do the balanced turbo with the new support. So with the upcoming support, with having Rising Nova, we will talk about how this deck will transform from the build that it is right now to the build with Rising Nova, how these cards will change. Okay, maybe this is not your favorite build, but it's definitely mine. Talking about Spike Brothers in Premium right now, this is the deck that I enjoy playing the most because it just is so control, as in controlling the base of the game. You could zero damage your opponent, you could rush your opponent, you could do whatever you like to have the game go to your liking. Having the GB in the early game doesn't really do much, but it starts doing a lot whenever you start G-guarding. So yeah, it's definitely a very interesting deck to play. It's not toxic as some people may think as when they see Zazan or they see Tempest, but it does really make the deck go faster playing these cards. Alright, if you want to see the full deck profile on this current build, because this is my build currently in the English format until we get the support from the new set, which is of course set 10 with Rising, then the deck will change. So if you want to see the deck profile on this deck, the deck that I was able to win the Thank You Fest with, you could check that out. The link will be in the description section below. If you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you're a big Sparkle fan, then you're in for a treat. If you like other clans as well, then we have a bunch of other deck profile matches, openings, and other stuff, because we have a huge team and we have, of course, a lot of players in our team. Alright, so let's talk about this build. Okay, so how will this deck change with the upcoming supports of Rising Nova and his minions? First of all, as you see, the grade 3s, of course, will change. I would say the trigger lineup will change as well. Everything will change. So let's start with the grade 3s first, then talk about the trigger lineup, and then go back to the grade 2s and the grade 1s. Grade 3s. First thing first, of course, we have to put Rising Nova in the deck. Does he necessarily need to be at 4? No, he doesn't really necessarily needs to be at 4, but definitely the minimum is 3. So what we want to do here is we will take these out. You could still play Gunwolf if you want to. It's still a very good card, but Rising and Bad and Dragger are better, and the Juggernaut was of course a replacement, so you could just take him out. So we take these 3 out, definitely, and we take 1 Bad and Dragger out. It's also not very important to still play the 4 copies of him, and we add in at least the 3 copies of Rising Nova, which means that your grade 3 would look like this, and we have 1 more card that we could put in. So we have 1 card right here that we have extra, which I will have on the side. Alright, and for the grade 2 lineup, which cards you could take out without really punishing yourself? The only card that you could take out is, of course, Burrow. But as we said, we will talk first about the trigger lineup before we go into the grade 2s. The trigger lineup, of course, you play the 4 heal, Deadly Heal that you could search with Jelly Beans. Jelly Beans you will keep in there because Jelly Beans could search this card out, could search that card out. As I said, it's very important that if you don't know how the deck works and why this build looks like this, then you need to check that other deck profile first. It's a long ass deck profile, but you need to check that other deck profile first, because this one will only talk about the transformation of the deck, and at the end of the video we'll explain a little bit on how the deck works. Okay, for the trigger lineup, we will keep the heals in because you search them with your Jelly Beans. The crits are good because you could stride with, and they are 15k shield. And of course, the draw triggers will keep being the same, because now we could also even play more draws. We could take 1 crit out to play more draws if we want to. So you could do that as well. But the most important thing that you want to do is, of course, you want to take out Linux to play the 4 copies of our new draw trigger, which means that all of our trigger lineup will be cheerleaders. That's the most important thing. That's one of the things that I'm so happy about, is all of them will be cheerleaders, and that's just crazy. That's insane. That's amazing. Again, you could take out one critical trigger to play an extra draw trigger in the deck, but I don't think that's necessary. I find myself needing these just to stride with, or just to guard with, because they are 15k shield, and the deck has a good draw trigger engine. So that's it. So that's it for the triggers. Now we could take them out, and we have more space to talk about other stuff. Let's put the starter and Tempest right here. Let's not do that, because we want to see that beautiful Spike logo. Okay, now we talk about the grade 2s. The only grade 2 that you can take out without hurting the deck is, of course, Burrow. And the only grade 2 that you want to put in the deck is, of course, the new branch. So you put 4 copies of this to replace the Burrow. For the grade 1s, because now we have Burrow in the deck, we don't really need Wonder Boy anymore. And you could just take him out to play something different. It's very important that these guys don't work with the GB8 if you want to use their second ability to draw a card. So you have to be very smart about the timing that you use them. But still, they are very important to have in the deck. While Burrow is actually a very good card, because gaining the power and drawing you a card is good, but it's not as good as the branch. Especially because he gives you more space in your grade 1 lineup, because now you could take out Wonder Boy. So we take the 3 Wonder Boy out of the deck. Now we have 4 cards that we could put in the deck. Next, we have another grade 1 that we could add to the deck, which is the Referee. This card will replace the cute Cray Elemental. And people would say, what? Why? It's because it's a 7k. 7k means that you could undercut your opponent in some situations. And with that, you actually want to play this card the same as playing the tier. So that's another card that you actually want to have in the deck. But does it really need to be at 4? Well, no, I don't think so. I think that's 3 is good, because now you have 6 right targets for your grade 1s, and that's fine. So now we have more cards that we can add to the deck. We have up to we have 5 cards that we could add to the deck. And you leave the Zazanid, you leave the Tempest in, there is no reason to play more. And with that, we could look at the other options that we could run in the deck. Alright, so let's see which other cards that we actually want to run in the deck. Our card that does make the deck better and consistent is, of course, the Acrobat Verde. You could play this card at 4, you could play this card at 3, pretty much depending on your preference. At least play 3. But Acrobat Verde does is, of course, on plays he could search you a grade 3 from the top 5 cards. And searching a grade 3 in this deck means that depending on the matchup, you could go to Bat and Dragger or into your Rising. But more importantly is that he gives you access to getting Jelly Beans in your hand. Getting Jelly Beans to your hand means you could get a Vanilla, or you could pretty much get your heal trigger to your hand. So Acrobat Verde is a very important card to have in the deck, especially a good right target if you go first, because you don't really have to undercut your opponent. But just calling it on the field means he could search you that card. One downside, you have to call it to the field to activate its ability. Why? Because you just want more cards in your hand to be able to defend with. But again, it's definitely a good addition to add to the deck. Okay, what other cards that we could run to the deck? Now let's see. We have 10 grade 3s, which means we have 2 too much. We have exactly 10 grade 2s, so we're good to go. And then we could add the 12 grade 1s, because we already have this. And we are now with 6, 9, 10. So we have 2 more cards that we could add to the deck, of course, because we already add the 3 copies of the Acrobat Verde. So what other 2 cards that we could add to the deck that make the deck strong? One of them is definitely another vanilla, because taking all the vanillas out will, of course, make the deck less consistent. And the last card could be another Rising. It could be another Acrobat Verde. It could be just another Vanilla. So the last card, it could also be another Tempest. The last card is pretty much up to you to run whatever card you want. For me, I think that I would maybe play it at like this first, just adding 2 more Vanillas to the deck, which is actually good because now you could easily get the skill of Sazan off if you want to, and you have also more shield value to the deck. That's good. You could do that, but you could also just add another Rising to the deck. So you take this out, you play another Rising. That could also work. You could take it out to play another Tempest. That's also very, very good, because having, of course, the Tempest in the deck means that you first could search out the Vanillas to your hand, so you have more shield value, but you also get that 1 GB, that sweet GB that you pretty much need. So that could work. Again, pretty much up to you to play it whatever you like to. It doesn't really make a big difference. For me, I feel like having that extra grade 3 is better because you just don't have to put that Acrobat Verde on the field to search for it. And you could also afford to search to your Jelly Beans if you don't really have to add it to your hand. And that extra grade 3 should be another copy of Rising Nova. So your deck would pretty much look like this. And that's fine. It's pretty much fine. You could take out these to put 1 more copy of this, or you could take out them to put this Vanilla. It doesn't really matter as long as you play 4 grade 1s Vanilla, then you keep the right amount of Vanillas into your deck, which work perfectly for me. I don't really need to add 1 more. Adding the other Acrobat Verde to the deck could work. One problem with Acrobat Verde is that you need to discard a card from your hand. And although you have those draw triggers in your hand that you could discard, you could discard a card like these that you could put back with him. Cards like Tier that you could put back with him is good. But one more card that I actually found very, very good to have in the deck is Ambush Dexter. Taking all of these out to play 1 or 2 copies of Ambush Dexter is really good. Because what this card is capable of is, of course, on ride, you could pretty much discard and draw, which is good because it does add to the consistency of the deck. But mostly, it is good to target one of these Vanillas that you already called was Zazan, and you call 2 cards to 2 copies of this. This will be able to recycle your field, your drop zone, so you have more cards in your deck that you want, but pretty much will be able to draw you 2 new cards, which means that you will fill your hand again with the right cards to get to your GB8. So the combination of these 2 is just so godly. So that's another card that could be a very good addition to the deck, especially in combination like these 2. But the thing is, you do need a counterblast in the early game, which sometimes you don't get. Sometimes you get only 1 that you want to use for your Mega Trainer. And most of the time, if you want to put this in the deck, then you would need to put at least a 3, and then you need to take the Acrobat Verde, and then you have this in the deck. You could do that. It's another card, as I said, that add to the consistency of the deck, but it's not necessary. It's good, it's effective, but it's not necessary. And for me, I think to make the deck more, let's say, competitive, then I would maybe add just a 2nd copy of Tempest and test the deck out and see how it does. See if these 6 grade 3s are good enough, or maybe we need more. So that's kind of it for this deck profile slash transformation transformation video. One more thing that we need to show you guys is, of course, how the G-Zone would look like. The G-Zone didn't really change much. There is 1 card that I still want to fit in the deck, but I just can't fit in. That's the that's pretty much actually your Fermios, especially if you want to play the combination with Ambush Dexter, is that you have way more soul to use this guy, and of course because Rising gives you the 2 markers, the double markers, and this card is lethal right away. especially in combination with Rising. But let's put him right here, and then we could talk about the cards that you could take out to play him. For the Krillin Elementals, we play the 2 copies of Cyclone, and then we play the 1 Marindol. This is, of course, perfect, more than enough. You still play the Marindol because sometimes you don't have the Counterblast for you to get that 1 flip, and from that moment on, your GB8 will be active. I normally play 2 copies of Marindol, but again, it's not necessary, and I will explain which card you could take out to play the 2nd copy of Marindol. If you're playing in a very rush heavy format, then you could take this card to play the Formios if you want to, but for now I think it's necessary to keep in the deck, so let's put it right here. Next card, of course, we run the 2 copies of Violence Ace, another card that's very important to keep in the deck. He has some crazy good combinations with Zazan, of course, and also with Tempest. And then we have the 2 copies of Aquarius, another card that I add in the deck because he is a better finisher than Firmios sometimes, and he also has very good combinations to play with cards like Zazan, to recall it, to even have more cards from your hand put on the field, and with that you'll be able to attack for more but also draw more. And this card just gives you a draw, which is good, but sometimes with having that 1 GB already, you have 2 extra attacks, which is also very good, especially in a deck that you could rush and not rush with. We have 1 copy of the GB8. Normally I play 2, depending on how retire heavy the format is, or if you will see Kagero a lot or not. It's just the 1 matchup that you sometimes need to get into the 2nd GB8. I don't know how Gridora will be in the formats, because again, this is definitely not yet the format that we have in English. It's just the Japanese format right now, and there are not much people that are testing the deck like I am with in the Japanese format in my area. So again, depending on how Gridora will be, but this is definitely the card that you could take out to play any other cards that you want. So you play a 2nd copy of the GB8, and you could play the Fermios. You could do that. Another card that you actually keep in the deck is, of course, Formido. It will always be a very important card to have in the deck. Being able to strike for free, being able to retire opponent's field, and just have the soul is good, especially again if you play this card. But normally it's a stable, I would say. You don't really go that much into it, but when you go into it, then it's necessary to have in the deck that you get the option to go into. And then, of course, we play our G-Guards. So we play the 3 copies of Linus, the 2 copies of Hegetongas, and then the 1 Desmiel and the 1 Reggaeton right here. And that's pretty much your G-Zone. So the cards that you would like to put in, let's say you could put a 2nd copy of the GB8, and you could play Formios. This is the card that I want to fit in, and if I want to do that, then pretty much I have to take out this card, or this card. And I don't really want to take out the Cyclone. I find the 2 copies of Cyclone actually very good. In the deck, being a Crane Metal that you flip is good. Being able to have him in a deck that you could use Zazan abilities twice if you want to is good. Again, you could combine this and this very well. If you already have Zazan on the field, you could like recall it with him, and then you go from GB3 at the end of the turn to GB4 at the end of the turn, which still gives you you still need the 2 G-Guards to get to your GB8, but then you don't have to go double flip G-Guard. You could just go for 1 of this and 1 of something different, because then you will be 4, 5, 6, 7. You're good to go. So yeah, it's another card that could make the deck very good. And the one reason why we don't play him is because we don't have enough soul to make his skill as good as he is. Although now with the branch grade 2 that goes to the soul and draw you cards, which is good in the early game as in the late game with the GB8, then I could see this card being better to play. But yeah, it's it depending on your preference which strat you want to take out to play this card. Many people would say just take out the Merendol, but he will find some matchups that he is very necessary to have in the deck. Although that he also flips something, so if your opponent would guard in attack, he will also flip something, but he's just not made for this deck. Alright guys, that is actually everything we wanted to talk about. We would like to thank you all for all the love, the support you give to our channel. Let us know in the comment section below if you guys are working on a premium deck as well, because this is of course the transformation of the GP8 deck. This is not necessarily the best deck with Rising, because now, because we have access to Rising, we finally could let this card shine, and that's when we see the Aggro Deck, which is another deck profile that I will do very soon on the channel as well, but that decks need way more testing than this deck, and because I play this deck so much, it's easier for me to start with this deck, and then of course I will go and jump into the Aggro Deck, which I will show you as well. The Aggro Deck with Rising is very interesting, because now you have Bed Dragger, you have Rising, you have Rising Nova, but you could still also use Rising Star with Instructor. A lot of crazy shenanigans that you could do. Also some of the old cards that you could back to the deck that makes the deck even better. And yeah, it's really nice to be able to see all of those all of those grade 2s especially make a comeback. Grade 2s that have very interesting abilities, like let's say Lethal Forward, like Axe Diver, like Laser Blackguard. All of those cards are coming back. Frog Raider is coming back as well. Alright guys, thank you all for watching yet again. Until next time.